Hey, great to have you with us. As I mentioned, this is BC 110, Introduction to the Creative Economy. And we've got a mix of students here, primarily freshmen, but we have some sophomores, juniors, and seniors as well.
Okay, great.
As you know, we're talking about the creative economy. We just got through kind of section one, talking about the creative as self. Now we're talking about the creative economy and the 5P framework. And then we're going to talk about specific creative industries as well. And this week's topic is around place and how the workplace really engenders creativity.
Sure.
And we were just looking at some different examples of kind of different workplace settings, both from an architecture perspective, a management support perspective, and even just kind of a physical layout perspective, leading to kind of serendipity and creative collisions.
Yeah, of course.
So that's kind of where we are. And I had mentioned to you and I had mentioned to the team that, clearly, as this new creative economy has arisen, it gave an opportunity for WeWork to rise as well. So, I mean, it's just fantastic to have you as a leader at WeWork, join us and kind of share some of your wisdom as well. So I gave the class a little bit of your background, but I'll share it again. Jake Bailey, 2013, correct?
14, but graduated early in 13, yes.
Okay, 2013, 14, Emerson alum. Actually, it was Jake that while he was a student at Emerson, started a company, and actually which led to the creation of Launch. So I think, and I'll let Jake tell the story, but while he was a student, he started a company, so he's an entrepreneur. President Pelton found out about it and asked him what Emerson could have done to have helped him along the way, and that actually led to the founding of Launch. And so he's also an Emerson board of advisors. He's been an entrepreneur, and now he's at WeWork. So Jake, I'll allow you to maybe introduce yourself, and then I had kind of a rough line of questioning, but we can kind of keep it loose and no slides as well.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. I think that makes me feel more accomplished than I am, but thanks for the flattery. So I graduated in 2014. I originally went to Emerson to study writing for film and television. During freshman orientation, had a massive panic attack, realized that was not at all what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Fun hobby, not what I wanted as a career. Ran back to my academic advisor and told him, I need to change majors. You need to transfer me. We have to figure something out. He was like, dude, it's Emerson. We have like 6 majors. So you either got to pick one of these or you have to transfer schools. And I'd binge watched a lot of Entourage that summer. I really liked Ari Gold's character, someone who was, I didn't want to be an asshole, but I wanted to be someone who was like creative, running a business, in the office, interpersonal relationships out of the office, working on creative projects. And so he suggested, why don't you study marketing here at Emerson and then go to law school and become an agent? So that was how I landed in marketing, really as a means to an end. And then through my marketing classes my freshman year, really became obsessed with branding and this concept of how to build a brand. And I'm a very hands-on learner, so my approach was, instead of just reading about it in case studies, let me just go and start a company and figure out how to build a brand from scratch. So I started a men's clothing company in between my freshman and sophomore year. Ran that for about a year and a half, really just learning the fundamentals of how to build a business. Loved running a company, loved entrepreneurship. The company did fairly well, but really difficult to scale a business where you have to like sell one shirt at a time. It was not the type of enterprise that I wanted to build one day. So through Emerson professors, I got connected with some entrepreneurs out of MIT that were starting some tech startups. So I started interning with them, doing marketing communications, social media, and really became obsessed with the ability to scale through technology. And so that was this light bulb moment where I said, I like being an entrepreneur and starting businesses. I really like scale. How do I find opportunities to combine those things? Coincidentally, my childhood best friend, who was going to the University of Texas in Austin, switched his major from petroleum engineering to software engineering. And he was also feeling this sense of, I'm tired of interning for big companies. I want to do my own thing. So the long story short is we put our heads together. We created a company focused on like restaurant technology during our junior years at Emerson. Emerson didn't have a program outside of E3, and I felt like I wasn't able to get the support and resources I needed there. So I would fly down to Austin every month and go to and attend UT's classes, and just sneak into their class and attend their classes. And they had like the founder of the Ethernet port, like was a professor there. He was our professor, and so he brought in all of these amazing tech entrepreneurs. And I got back to Emerson and just scheduled office hours with Lee. I was like, hey, I don't think we're doing enough to support student entrepreneurs. And he said, well, do you think you could do it better? I said, I don't know, but I have ideas. And he said, all right, like, how about I hire you as a consultant and build a program and then bring it back to me in 4 weeks and let's review it. And so I put the initial framework together for what was at the time called the Emerson Accelerator Program. Lee and the rest of the leadership team liked it and said, all right, you're presenting it to the board of trustees in 2 weeks. No students have ever presented to the board of trustees, so don't screw it up. And we were trying to raise $10,000. I think we raised $120,000 in that one meeting. And then, fast forward, what's Sanjay, 5 years, 6 years, it has now turned into launch, and it's now has a curriculum around it and a lot more structure and great leadership. So, something started small actually, I think has some good impact now. So leaving Emerson, we had already raised funding from some venture capitalists for our startup. We ran that for about 5 years, pivoting all the time. I mean, we probably like hired and fired half the company every year, and ultimately got to a point of profitability in our 4th year. We sold the company to a company actually based in Boston called Level Up, which does like mobile payments. You might see them at Beloco and other places around town. So we sold the technology to them. My team then got acqui-hired by a cybersecurity company, and I was 5 years into this journey and very burnt out. So I took some time off, moved to New York, and started at WeWork about 2.5 years ago in a sales capacity. And now I'm running our marketplace sales team, which is, does anyone raise a show of hands? How many people know of WeWork? Okay, so like 50%, awesome. So WeWork sells space, office space, to companies of all sizes, originally like freelancers, entrepreneurs, startups. Now about 50% of our revenue comes from enterprise companies. So Facebook, Amazon, Google, they have tens of thousands of employees that sit in WeWork spaces. And so what my team is now focused on is, what are all of the other products and services that those companies need when they move into a WeWork space? They need internet, they need phone lines, they need insurance, they need legal, they need payroll, you name it. My team is now either building new products in-house or creating partnerships with third-party companies to start selling new products and services to our members. So we have about 4 or 5 products we're selling now, and we'll probably do, I think our goal for next year is about $500 million in revenue. For a team that just got started 6 months ago is a bit aggressive, but that's what you do it for. So that's a little bit about my background. Definitely entrepreneur at heart, and now an intrapreneur at WeWork. But getting the itch to start something else soon. So we'll see. Thanks. Sanjay, I think you're muted.
Yeah. So first of all, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on WeWork, just get your thoughts on kind of the up and down of WeWork, if you will, and the pivot, and some lessons, some business lessons, right, here. Yeah. But also, I think the class for me also is about just sharing what the students can learn also. So it'd be great just, while we go through that, also the kind of the second piece around kind of, advice that you would give to to young students, to Emersonians, and and perhaps even aspiring entrepreneurs. So I think kind of those are my two themes
Sure.
for our talk. And by the way, I'm sure they all have questions. I want to leave some time for kind of questions
Sure.
as well.
Yeah. In general advice, if obviously if you're in this class, you're probably interested in business and potentially being an entrepreneur. Greatest piece of advice I got was actually from one of my mentors who was my largest investor in my company and became kind of a father figure to me over the years. He used to be the CEO of GE Asia, really high powered Fortune 5 CEO. And he told me, chase the skill and everything else will follow. And that's really been how I've tried to build my career, was always what's the skill that I'm trying to get out of whatever opportunity I'm in. It was never about the money. It was never about recognition. It was never about ego. It sometimes became about ego, but I had, you have to talk yourself out of ego decisions and into logical, pragmatic decisions. But for me, it was always chasing the skill. And I think we talk a lot about having a comfort zone that we operate in. Like, we know who our groups of friends are. We know what our skills are. We know where we like to be. But I kind of think of it as like a confidence zone. And you're confident in the things that you're inherently good at. If you're naturally better at cardio, you like running, you don't like weightlifting, but like, it doesn't mean that there isn't value in trying different types of exercises that stretch you and that push you and build new muscles you didn't know you needed. So I've taken that approach with my career. And when you're an entrepreneur, you wear 50 hats at once. One day you're on the phone with your lawyer, and the next day it's your accountant, and the next day you're interviewing and hiring, and the next day you're pitching clients, sometimes all of those in the same day. So really focus on the skill and try to be in a growth mindset and learn. For me, that's looked like having great mentors around me. I think, to be honest, like, that's probably how I've gotten where I've gotten. Isn't because I'm the smartest. Like, I'd actually venture to say I'm probably like 30th percentile in almost everything I do. Like, I'm good, I'm above average, I'm not great. But I've tried to really learn from a lot of people who are much smarter than me. And when I interviewed here at WeWork, when I've interviewed elsewhere, most of the candidates that I'm going against I'm 28, just turned 28. Most of them are 30, 35. And I think there's this ability for me to leap multiple years in my career by learning from people who've done this for 20, 30, 40 years. I know what's around the corner. I've read this script before. I've seen this play out. So that's really helped me in my career. I'm always the youngest person on my team, youngest manager in my division at WeWork. But it's not because I think I have anything inherently unique to me. It's just I've tried to learn from other people.
So what I heard is, one, chase the skill, and two, it's actually kind of dovetails with our whole theme for these 3 weeks, right? Is that it's about teamwork and collaboration and bringing people together. And that's kind of been a uniform theme that we've been talking about. So I think you're echoing that point.
And also, like, be easy to work with, whether you're an intern or whether you're a founder or you're joining someone else's company. Be the person people want to work with. It really goes a long way. Say yes to opportunity. Don't be entitled and feel like someone's singling you out for an opportunity that other people don't want to do. Like, to be honest, like, I think our generations get looped in with this entitlement, and like, some of it is founded. Like, I work with a lot of young people, like, and people my age, and there's an entitlement that comes across in meetings that's like, that's not my job. Why should I do that? Why aren't you asking so-and-so to do that? Why are you asking me? And the reality is, like, anytime someone asks you to do something, it's an opportunity to prove yourself and an opportunity to build a relationship. And that's, I look at my career at WeWork, and I got here as a sales rep. I was like an entry-level sales rep, basically. I took on the accounts that no one wanted, that no other sales rep had really figured out how to break into. And I started seeing some traction with those accounts. And I built up a really good reputation in the company for being able to take things that other people didn't want and do something good with them, and built relationships with our executives, and just said, like, no deal is too small for me to take on. No account is too small for me to take on. And then that got me noticed by our executive leadership team. And when it came time for them to send a SWAT team into our India business and say, hey, India's struggling, we need to send in a team of people to turn this business around, I was one of the people they asked to do that, which no one else wanted to do. No one wanted to move to India for 6 months and try to right this ship, but we did it, and we did it very well. India is now one of our most successful international markets, and that, as soon as I got back to New York, landed me an even bigger position that, again, I probably didn't deserve from like a skill set perspective, but because I was willing to take on any challenge, say yes, learn from people above me, they knew that I would be dependable in the role.
Jake, so question is, so what did you see at WeWork? What brought you to WeWork, and how has that journey been? You were there before the IPO, so you've gone through that whole craziness, right? And
what IPO? We never had the IPO. It failed. But
right.
yeah,
So in India, you're selling profitable services, right?
Yes. We're profitable. We will be next year.
No, I think it'd be good for the team to hear that. I think I told them revenue minus expense equals profit, and profit has to be positive. So
profit is good. Profit is king.
Profit is key. But I think it'd be good for them to hear, like, what took you to WeWork, and like, how's that journey been?
Sure. So I was a WeWork member when I was a student. I think it was my senior year. We had raised funding from some investors, and the first thing I did was went out and got a WeWork office. So I think I was one of the first WeWork members in Boston. And then my girlfriend at the time from Emerson, we graduated. She got a job in DC, so we moved to DC, and I got a WeWork office there. And then my team in Austin started growing, and we got an office there. And I just loved the product. I loved the company. I loved the brand. I loved the story. I used it every day, and it made a difference in my life. It made a difference in my business. And then met someone who worked at WeWork. We started dating. After I sold my company, I was like, I don't know what I want to do next. I'm just going to move to New York, take some time off, figure it out. And she was our head of social media. She was like, why don't you just come work here? We're starting up a new enterprise business. It's growing. It's going to be a big part of the business. I think you would be great at it. So I started just kind of interviewing casually with some people here, feeling it out. And it was pretty clear that this was 3 years ago, and WeWork was just in the process of shifting from really being a business for co-working and startups and small businesses to really this enterprise platform that would attract the biggest companies in the world. And I wanted to be a part of that story, and I wanted to be a part of, frankly, history. WeWork was the fastest growing startup of all time. It has raised more funding than any private company in the world. And it was growing from, when I joined the company 3 years ago, we had 3,000 employees. By the end of my first year, we had 15,000. So we were hiring 100 people a week for the entire year. And the growth was incredible. What I like, Sanjay, I think to your point is, obviously revenue minus expenses is profit. Sometimes you have to run unprofitably. Sometimes you are required to put more money into your growth that will pay off in the long run, but in the short term, it shows as an unprofitable business. And that was what WeWork. You hear all these, you read all the headlines, you see all the press about WeWork's a failing business. Couldn't be further from the truth. We actually have a very healthy business. Pre-pandemic, we had a healthier business, but we raised so much capital. We raised about $18 billion in funding because we were opening a new WeWork building every single day. So we opened 300 buildings a year. And when you open a building, it costs millions, sometimes tens of millions of dollars to sign a 15-year lease, to design a space, order all the furniture, all the vendors, everything it takes to get a building open. we have to pay for upfront in year one. We don't realize returns on that until year 2, 3, 4, et cetera. So our business financially looked really bad in 2018, 19 into 2020. Now that our growth has slowed and all of those buildings are open and we're not opening new buildings, you'll start to see that our finances will turn and we'll be profitable next year. So I really wanted to be a part of history. That's why I joined WeWork. I didn't think that history would be with an asterisk that said negative history next to it, because obviously if you know WeWork, you've seen the rise and fall of our company in the press over the past 12 months. But we're in the turnaround phase right now.
No, I think that's great to hear. I mean, by the way, I think the comment around that is entrepreneurship and startups are hard. I think everybody thinks that they're going to join a startup and, you're going to IPO, initial public offering, and you're going to be a millionaire, everything works out. And startups are really, really difficult. I mean, if I could just add, I went to a startup thinking the same thing in 2000, when the internet was just like taking off and we thought we were all going to be billionaires. And, then the next thing, the stock market crashed and, the company's toast. So yeah. Basically, WeWork, raised a ton of money. The valuation got up to 70 billion. Obviously, things kind of blew up. And so now have you guys recapitalized the business, kind of right-sized the business? And it sounds like you've changed the business model from small startups, if you will, to large enterprises. And that's what you guys are trying to do now.
Yeah, that change had happened pre-IPO failure. That change really happened a few years ago. But today, about 48 to 50% of our business comes from these large Fortune 500 companies. And the reason we like that is, we are signing, the way our business works is we sign a 15-year lease in a building. The landlord then gives us money, tenant allowance, TI, to go and build out that space. So we take a check from the landlord for $5 million, we build out a WeWork space, and then we rent it out in smaller chunks to startups, medium-sized businesses, large companies. We have risk of 15 years. We are exposed. So what we try to do is mitigate that risk by signing the longest term membership agreements with our members that we can. Startups don't want to sign a 2-year membership agreement. They want month-to-month flexibility. It's great because we can charge them a higher price for that flexibility, but if a pandemic hits, they can all cancel their contract the next month. When a company like Facebook or Amazon comes to us, they're used to going out in Boston and saying, I'm going to hire 2,000 employees. I need to sign a 15-year lease. They can now come to WeWork and do a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal with us. Substantially more flexible than the market. And for us, it's great because we can now secure 50% or 100% of that building for the next 4 years and ride out any recession or pandemic that happens. So we're really trying to de-risk our business by moving upstream to enterprise, and it's working. There's a very strong value proposition for enterprise. We're incentivized as a business to do better deals with enterprise companies. Yeah. So I think you'll see, honestly, probably 70% of our business will be Fortune 500 companies in the next 2 years.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So the business has pivoted, and you've changed the business model. I mean, the obvious question, and then I'll turn it to the class, is what are you seeing now with the pandemic? How has that impacted the business and kind of the future of work, if you will? I mean, are we even going to need to go back into the offices, and can we all just work from home in our pajamas?
No. And I don't just say that because I'm a WeWork employee, but there's a lot of studies that show that the first 2 months of the pandemic, work from home was there was something novel about it, and there was something that people really enjoyed, but productivity levels, loneliness, isolation really increased post that, and there's a real desire for people to have social interaction. This is actually my first week back in the office. I went down to Texas and lived there for the past 6 months. So this is my first week back in our office since the pandemic hit. And I gotta say, it's amazing being back with coworkers and just seeing people's faces around the office that you kind of forgot about. So one, I think there's a lot of data that proves that we're a more productive workforce when we're together. We're social creatures. The second is, how has our business changed? Well, Just like my startup pivoted every year, WeWork pivots every 3 months. Our business fundamentally changes every 3 to 6 months. And being agile and being iterative and having the ability to pivot is something that's going to benefit everyone on this call in your career. How we're doing that as a business is we're kind of moving from this, you must take dedicated space with us to use the WeWork platform, to a more flexible, fluid arrangement. So my team has spun up 2 new products. One is called WeWork All Access and one is called On Demand. What we're hearing from our large enterprise companies is, I want my people to go back to the office, but I don't plan on returning 5 days a week to start. Some people might use it 3 days a week. Some people might use it twice a month. And I don't want them all using the same office. I want them to be able to use whichever office is closest to home, so they don't have to get on public transportation. So what we did is we basically said, all right, like, you get your WeWork Black Card. We're going to activate 5,000 of these for Facebook employees. And all they have to do is walk up to any WeWork building, tap in, and we'll charge them for the day. And we'll charge them, $50 a day. So now Facebook has this totally new, flexible real estate portfolio at their disposal. All 800 WeWork buildings globally, they can now work from. So we're giving them increased flexibility to choose who works from their space, when they work, and where they work. In an industry that's very rigid, like real estate, where it's these teams work in this building from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that's gone. It's now going to be, you can choose when you work, where you work, how you work, but having access to physical space is still important. Work from home full-time is not the future.
No, I mean, that's really interesting. I think it kind of reinforces some of our learning in this section around kind of creative collisions. People are social, people need to collaborate. People need to have kind of serendipity in terms of meetings, and that's really hard to do solely working from home.
And we actually do, you talk about the serendipity
collision point. I'll take you around the office here, in a few minutes, because we actually, anyone who's walked into a WeWork space knows that it has this buzz, this energy, this vibe to it. And that's not accidental. That's all intentional. We engineer our spaces for collaboration. So we create our hallways, and if a hallway is normally 5 feet wide, we make them 4 feet wide, so that when you walk down the hallway, you're a little closer to each other as you pass. And our staircases have a little bit more narrowness to them, so that we create bump zones. We really are thoughtful around how we design and build our spaces to encourage collaboration, enhance productivity. And I think you see that in the pandemic, where all of these large Fortune 500 companies are choosing to keep their WeWork space because they know it's an experience that their people enjoy.
Right. No, thank you. That's great. Let me allow the class to ask you a couple of questions. We're always rushed for time, and we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left, and I wanted to give them a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, of course.
My question was having to do with the creation of those creative spaces, like the evolution from a stereotypical office cubicle space to a more creative space that fosters collaboration. In your opinion, do you think there's ever a time where that goes too far, where it becomes difficult to separate your work life and your life outside of your job?
Well, I think we're creating these collaboration hubs, inside of work. We do try to we try to give people the flexibility to work from spaces that work for them. So, for example, I live in Brooklyn. I just moved to Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago. I don't want to come into Manhattan every day. So having the flexibility of knowing there are 5 WeWorks in Brooklyn within a 15-minute walk from me means that I now have the flexibility of choosing where I work. Within each of those buildings, there might be different programming within the building that is more attractive to me. Some might have video conferencing rooms, some might have podcast studios, some might have more breakout brainstorming whiteboard type rooms. Some might have better lounges. So like we try to, one, have a platform that has a lot of optionality, and two, within each of those assets that we have, build enough flexibility in terms of our space type that people are able to choose what works for them. What we actually found is we actually put sensors under a lot of our furniture, so we can see like how many people use the conference room, how many people are sitting on a couch. And what we found is that people will work from 12 different spaces throughout the office on any given day. In a traditional office, they work from like one, it's their cubicle. Here it's, I'm going to take a, this Zoom call in this conference room. I'm going to meet with my boss in his office next. I'm going to meet with my team up on the staircase and do like a little impromptu, afternoon drink. I'm going to do an interview in, a cafe area on the 4th floor. So we really try to make it as flexible as possible.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Tammy Laura. So I thought it was interesting how you talk about how you're the youngest usually among your team and everything. And one of the things I'm really curious about as someone who wants to be a young entrepreneur and I started working with some brands, I wanted to know, like, how do you navigate that? And at the same time, like, I know you talked about like mentorship and everything, but sometimes like you worry that you want to be respectful, but you also want to be taken like seriously. And you want to also make sure that you are not kind of taking steps that could push you back further. Like, what are certain things like in your workspace or even outside of your workspace that you do to make sure that you are like on top of it and like you stand out in a way that like draws people towards you and like promotes you more?
I've always just focused on building a strong personal brand. And I think you have to define like what you want your brand to be. For me and for my co-founder, it was always humility. It was always trying to be the most humble person in the room. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in Boston, you get a lot of like Northeastern and Boston College and BU and Harvard and MIT students that are really intelligent, really smart, great at STEM, really cocky, really arrogant. And I think people start to build a reputation. What my same mentor told me is it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and only one day to ruin it. And that's something I think about with every meeting I go into is this adding to my personal brand or is this going to hurt it? And I have always wanted my brand to be someone who's curious, someone who listens, someone who seeks advice, someone who shares advice. That was always how my team got ahead. We always were very transparent with any investor or any advisor was like, we don't know what we don't know. And that's why we're here trying to talk to you. So every meeting was about trying to gain knowledge and to gain advice. And oftentimes those were the people who ended up writing us checks at the end of the day. There's like an old saying, ask for advice, get money, ask for money, get advice. And so for us, it was always asking about advice. We never turned the conversation to finance. And we ended up, getting ahead. And I think I still keep in touch with a lot of our investors, and the feedback we still get from them is, you guys just always worked hard, and we knew that we were comfortable writing you a check because we knew it was in good hands. It wasn't, even if the product we were investing in didn't work out, we knew you would figure out another way to make something else work. So it was just having that trust and dependability that you build over time with whoever you're working with. Ageism is real. People will not take you seriously because you're young and because you're a college student. That's something that you get over with results and you get over with a reputation. The more success that you see, the more people will take you seriously. Investors and advisors don't want to see that every time you meet with them, you ask for advice, but then you meet with them the next time and you never acted on their advice. They want to see that you've done something with the knowledge they've given you. They want to see that last month they met with you and you had 2 customers and this month you have 10 customers. Like that gets them bought into you as an entrepreneur. So traction and reputation.
Thank you.
Hey, hi. I had a question bouncing off of Tammy Laura's. I was wondering about like David Newman in the start of the company. It seems like a lot of the problems that like came with WeWork were directly linked to his personal identity and like problems that people had with him and the fact that he kind of overextended his reach with the company. And I was just wondering like how much of the process that you're going through now is like recovering from what happened to WeWork prior to the IPO and an opening, and how much of it is actual innovation and like new ideas for the company.
It's a great question. A lot of WeWork's struggles were self-inflicted from former leadership, including Adam and his executive team that were his yes men. He was removed from the company almost a year ago this week, and within 1 week, 20 of his executives were fired. Since then, we've gone from 15,000 employees down to 6,000. So we've cut a lot of our colleagues in the past year. And so a lot of the past, call it 12 to 18 months have been right sizing and rewriting the ship. And now, really since the pandemic has hit, it's how do we evolve the business and how do we innovate on top of this? But we had to start with a solid foundation, and that meant getting our finances in order, getting our building portfolio in order, and getting our team structure and leadership in order. So now that that is set, I'd say, 60, 70% is focused on new product innovation and growth.
Thank you.
Jake, we're at time, and I want to allow the students the time to get to their next class. So sorry to cut it short, but listen, thank you very much for giving us the time. I think it was really great to get your insights in terms of the future of work, as well as kind of your personal guidance to the students as well. So thank you for it, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me. If anyone has questions, feel free to share my email, Sanjay, with the group, and would love to chat one-on-one if people want to.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jake.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone. See you Monday. We'll talk the announcements.
Hi. I missed the first launch meeting, and I thought that so I scheduled a meeting with Wes during the launch meeting, and I didn't know that the launch meeting was going to be during that time.
Hey, Tamara, can I call you?
Oh, you want to call me? Okay, you can call me.